useful feature, particularly when you're dealing with an interview. Now imagine this, I don't have it here, but imagine you've got a talking head. So you've interviewed somebody and they've talked for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, however long it is. And they've said lots of really important stuff, but you don't really know where it all is throughout your clip. And to get to it each time, you need to bring the clip down and trim it or select the different bits and pieces here. But what you'd really like to do is go in, listen to the whole thing through once, mark your in and out points and save just that portion all the way through, one after another, so you can drop them in the timeline later on. Because at the moment you've got one massive long clip with one name and very difficult to find the bits you like, unless of course you're using markers. But if you can create subclips, you can go through it in advance, choose the bits you want, save them as individual clips, and drop them into the timeline where and when you need them, if you organise it properly. So how do you create subclips? Well, I'm going to show you with this boat moving through. So if I click about here, we can see that the boat is not quite coming into land, so we can't quite see the land. So let's start there, do an I for an in point, and go a little bit further, O for an out point. Now, you can either right-click the section down here and go and find where it says Create Subclip, but notice, I'm going to hit Escape to get out that menu. Notice you've actually got the icon here for creating subclips. And when you click on that, it's going to take just that portion and create a clip which just has that bit to it. And notice it gives you the option to name it. Now if you're doing a talking head, the important thing here is to name it with something that makes sense for what the person's saying. So this says boat into harbour MPEG. If I put boat C only and leave subclip 1 there and click OK, notice it's added it to my all media. Now what I would do is right click in this panel and I go search smart bins, and under all I'm just going to put subclip. Okay, and I'm just going to do search, and you'll see that the subclip has come into its own smart folder. Right click on the subfolder if you remember and go down to save as smart bin, and then I can open up my smart bin. There's my smart bin. I'm just going to rename it because I don't really want all that search results bit. I just want where it says subclip. So select all that and hit delete. So it's searching for anything that comes up in subclip. Now if I now go through my projects and I find another bit that's really interesting that I want to use that somebody's saying, so say this bit where he's going to go through here. So I want this bit where it's going to go sea wall. Okay, click the save as subclip, call it sea wall, but just make sure I leave subclip in there. So select that, sea wall, click OK. Bang, it's dropped straight into the subclip folder. Now if you always use a similar name, so rather than subclip you might want to call it Talking Head 1 or whatever you're naming it, it's going to drop into this subclip folder and be there available for you. Just going to go and find one more. Let's do the bit with the wave coming over. There's that wave that's coming over there, just when the wave's about to start. So there, just there. Take it to that section there and then create the subclip and call it wave over wall. It's called subclip 3 already. Click OK, bang, it's straight in there. And now when I'm putting my timeline through later on and I want to drop in these various clips, I've got a real good explanation of what each one is, and I can drop them in the appropriate place straight out of my bin, which is a really good way of working, particularly if you have to go through a very long clip in advance to select the bits that you want to use. And as I say, with talking heads, that's really great. Now in the timeline down here you also have the option to create subclips. However, it doesn't work in quite the same way. So if you were to do a selection, so I've selected this clip and I do a selection and I right click on the clip and I do subclips, so you can see it says here create subclip, and I click subclip, it comes in here and I think, oh great, I've got a subclip. I didn't get a chance to rename it, but look what happens when I bring it down as an item. If I bring it down, notice it's not a subclip, it's the whole thing again. Now, if you want to create a subclip, you're basing it on what you have trimmed in the timeline. So if I trim it in the timeline, I've got auto ripple, that's why it jumped there. And I then do a selection based on that clip. So right click on that clip and then choose create subclip. It will create a subclip. Again, I didn't have the chance to rename it, but when I drop it in the timeline, you can see it's exactly the same length as the item that I had trimmed. So bear in mind, if you want to go through a clip and choose the individual bits quickly as subclips, do it in the trimmer. If you want to trim things and save them as subclips for later, do it in the timeline. I would not advise doing it in the timeline. I don't think that's a good way of doing it, but you can if you need to. The best way of doing it is in the trimmer, and if you remember earlier, I showed you that to load things in the trimmer, you can either right click and open in trimmer, or you can change those options that allow you to double click and open through your options, preferences, and down the bottom it says double click on media loads file into trimmer instead of tracks. Just make sure that you've got that clicked. My name's Andrew Davis. I hope you found this useful. Subclips are a must, particularly people who are dealing with documentaries.